You got the accent.
I think I'd like to marry.
She rates a positive.
Bing Crosby.
For 10 years, there is no other singer in the pop world. There's Bing Crosby, and there are Bing Crosby imitators.
American pop culture as we know it today begins with an individual.
If he's not the most important vocal artist of the 20th century, he's in the top 1.5.
He could sing the cookbook, and it would still be popular.
A man of such immense talent and popularity that he dramatically changed popular music, radio, television, and films.
Nobody was #1 at the box office for 5 years, like Bing, who also had the top radio ratings at the same time and was making 40 records a year, 24 gold records, an Academy Award, and was nominated 3 times. I mean, the career is nothing even remotely like it.
In the 30s and 40s, he's so incalculably enormous that you can't even come up with a set of metaphors that would describe it.
Hi, this is Rich Little, a fan, a friend, and an imitator of Bing Crosby. You know, Bing once told Merv Griffin, "You know, this boy does me better than I do, you know." Please join us now for the story of an unassuming man who became an American icon, legend, and national treasure.
Do you hear me? Don't mess with Mr. In-Between.
Small fry, strutting by the pool room. Small fry, should be in the schoolroom. My, put down that cigarette. You ain't a grown-up high and mighty yet. Small fry.
Harry Lillis Crosby was born in 1903, the fourth of 7 children, part of a working-class Irish Catholic family. Bing grew up in Spokane, Washington, in a modest house in a Catholic neighborhood. Here, Harry became Bing, a name literally out of the comics.
There was a comic strip called the Bingville Bugle, and in the strip was a character named Bingo. When I was 3 or 4 years old, I used to go around saying bingo, bingo, and that was reduced to Bing, and that was the name that was hung on me.
Snoqualmie Jojo, a chief from the big snow, loved a maiden named Moonglow, and what do you know?
Bing's father was hard-working but easygoing, traits Bing would inherit himself. His mother was the disciplinarian.
Right away, you have a dichotomy that begins to define who Bing's going to become, because on the one hand, you have the mother as a very strict Catholic. She loves music, but it's a very puritanical, strict work ethic. And then the father is happy-go-lucky, you know, Hollywood Harry, they ended up calling him, the mandolin-playing, striped shirt, the straw boater.
To the tables down at Maury's, to the place where Louis dwells.
Bing lived a stone's throw away from St. Aloysius Catholic Church, where he was an altar boy. Just as close were Gonzaga High School and Gonzaga University, Jesuit institutions that had a profound influence on Bing.
The Jesuits are quite remarkable. They're basically liberal educators. They are very much involved in teaching things like debating, public speaking, Latin, the classics.
He earned a classical education. I think that makes him rare among entertainers.
He had a tremendous sense of language. He was in all the school plays. He wrote poetry. He read voraciously.
When he was interacting with the Jesuit priests here on campus, these were priests who had been working in the Northwest as missionaries who were still living on campus that he could actually interact with and kind of learn from them and be set by their example. He learned a lot about what it was to be a man, what it was to be a Catholic man.
Now this is the Gonzaga that I knew. The main building, the trees, the campus, and the good fathers will tell you that I pitched a few pebbles around in those dear days. But I've matured some since then, mellowed. Gee, I hope I haven't gotten right.
I love those dear hearts and gentle people who live in my hometown.
Bing excelled in sports, good enough at swimming to lifeguard at a public pool. And Bing excelled in baseball.
He was once corrected at Gonzaga for putting a baseball uniform on the statue of St. Francis. They had a big game coming up, and he thought that might help.
Now, as a teenager, Bing held many part-time jobs. His favorite was caddying at a local golf course, where he fell in love with the game. But this wasn't his first love.
Come on in here.
Come on in here.
Come on in here.
Come on in here.
Alexander Ragtime Band.
When vaudeville shows came to town, especially Al Jolson, Bing would find a way to work backstage.
He would remember the routines, and he'd come in Monday, and the kids would just be amazed that he could do all the routines. He would memorize them, he could impersonate the various performers, he knew the songs. He had an incredible audiographic memory. He heard a song once, bang, he knew it.
Ragtime Band.
Active and popular, Bing sang and played the drums at local dances. Another teenager named Al Rinker had a band and an opening for a drummer.
They had fired their drummer without bothering to hire a new one. Then they heard that there was a kid at Gonzaga who played drums. They invited Bing over. He rehearsed in their home. He said, you know, I can sing too.
My interest in music was really sparked by a band that I played with 5 other boys, and we played for dances and proms and one thing and another. Then I used to sing the vocal.
They used to go to a place called Bailey's House of Music. Bing and Rinker would go into the listening booth and they would spend hours there. This was their graduate school. That's how they really learned all of those songs. They would just play track after track until they would be kicked out at closing.
Bing soaked it all up. The stars he watched from backstage, the music he and Rinker heard in the store.
They were the first recipients of the idea of recorded technology. And for them, every record was a mystery until it was played. The fact that you could turn a switch and hear a brass band in your home, or hear a Jewish vaudevillian from Broadway, or a country band from Kentucky, this was astonishing. And so they did not come to this music with prejudices. They just loved music. They heard it all.
I'm no millionaire, but I'm not the type to care, 'cause I've got a pocket full of dreams.
It was the early 20s, and Bing stood at the crossroads of destiny. He had to choose between a career in law or entertainment, and he did so in his characteristic, easygoing style.
I studied law for a couple of years, and at the same time I was playing drums and singing with an orchestra and a theater downtown in Spokane. I was doing very well financially, so I thought maybe I'd try the entertainment field. It looked like it'd be more lucrative for me than the law, and I probably would have been a very bad lawyer anyhow.
How far is it to California? California Avenue? Let's see.
No, the state of California.
Yeah, out there by the Pacific Ocean, near Hollywood, you know.
Oh, I'm packing my grip, and I'm leaving today, 'cause I'm taking a trip California way.
Bing was 22, Rinker 17 when they left Spokane, singing their way to California in an old beat-up Model T.
The reason we came to Los Angeles is because Al Rinker's sister was living there and was working in vaudeville and nightclubs, Mildred Bailey. And we knew we had a home with her if we could get there. Not only that, but she opened up some doors for us that got us employed.
Hollywood flourished in the Roaring 20s, and so did Bing and Al. With Mildred's help, they got work in vaudeville, honing their music and adding comedy to their act. Now, steady work meant steady pay, which financed nights out on the town, days out on the golf course, and a carefree lifestyle. They were gaining notoriety and soon cut their first record.
I think the first song I ever recorded was with Alton Rinker, with Don Clark's orchestra in a warehouse downtown Los Angeles someplace. The name of the song was I Got the Girl.
I've got a girl, I've got a girl, oh what a girl, oh what a girl. She's got a smile, you'd walk a mile to see.
Within a year, legendary bandleader Paul Whiteman was interested.
Whiteman was probably the first, by contemporary standards, superstar in American popular culture. He was just huge. He was the first performer to really popularize the idea of the modern dance orchestra.
Whiteman signed Bing and Rinker, and they joined the Whiteman Orchestra on tour. Bing and Al first took stage in Chicago, and they were a tremendous hit. But something much more powerful happened in the Windy City. Bing sees Louis Armstrong. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Dinah, is anyone finer in the state of Carolina? If there is, then you know, show to me. Dinah, the Dixie blazing, we love the city gazing to the eyes of Dinah me. Baby, every night, one eye, shake with fat song, cause my dynamite, change your mind, Baba did you want to China, baby? I'll have a new line, oh, baby. Oh, Dinah.
He sees Armstrong, and it's like a bolt of lightning hits him in the neck.
Louis Armstrong didn't play or sing music as it was written. He improvised, he interpreted, he gave of his heart, his soul.
Bing absorbs Armstrong's scat singing style and begins developing a style of his own.
Years later, when somebody asked him who was the greatest influence in your life, he said, I'm proud to be a member of the congregation of Reverend Satchelmouth. And then he said, Armstrong is the beginning and the end of music in America. It's where it starts, and it's not going to ever get any better.
Do you hear that whistle down the line?
Now, after Chicago, Bing and Al continued to hit big in the Midwest.
Only one little sound that way.
They arrived in New York ready to shine.
We went over very well until we got to the Paramount Theater in New York, and we didn't go over there at all. As Bing said, we laid the biggest egg on Broadway.
Whiteman couldn't even give them away, and he tried. He had them singing in the lobby for people waiting online to get into the next show, and they didn't want to hear them.
Instead of giving up, Whiteman added Harry Barris and named the group Paul Whiteman's Rhythm Boys.
Just right, and I nice got love. You got feet, you got toes, you got thighs, you got clothes. It's so mean, it's so sweet, you got love. You've got a perfect rating that's sure worth presenting. I know it. No use of debating about your style. You got feet.
They had a wonderful, cocky irreverence about them. They were nice kids, they were clean cut, but at the same time, they were fresh and they had vitality, and they didn't take themselves seriously.
And they clicked, blending music and comedy.
Wait until you hear us, Mr. Whiteman. We've got a brand new idea that's a sensation.
What is it?
Well, while Al and I sing, Bing here goes boo-boo-boo-boo, boo-boo-boo-boo.
What happens when he sings? The audience goes boo-boo-boo-boo.
Well, you go right ahead, boys.
What are you boys moaning about?
That Mississippi mud. Oh, that's pretty. When the sun goes down.
The Rhythm Boys experimented. They used orchestral arrangements as no one had ever done before. And solos were written for Bing that gave the music a swing and spontaneity that resonated with audiences.
Come let us stroll down Lover's Lane.
Technology was changing music, and Bing recognized its importance. The new carbon microphone meant Bing's rich baritone voice could be used just like an instrument.
Auf Wiedersehen, my dear.
Before that, you had to sing loud. Ethel Merman on Broadway, because she had the voice could reach the back row. All of a sudden, the amplification opened the door to a whole new interpretation where people could be beautifully subtle and romantic.
If you combine the subtlety of his phrasing with the interpretation of the lyrics, you get for the first time a genuine erotic undercurrent in popular song. They're hearing a very virile voice putting them over, and it's a very different effect than people were accustomed to.
From the Gamma 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 Girls.
Not the Gamma Gamma Gamma.
Impersonal.
But where are they?
Right over there. And if I may say so, sir, they're pips.
It's not only Bing's voice and how he is singing, it's also what he is singing.
Fortunately, he was coming up at exactly the same time as the first generation of serious American lyricists. Now we've got Larry Hart and Cole Porter and Irving Berlin, a whole new generation who are writing a really interesting, sophisticated, sexy, sensual, romantic, witty verse. And Bing is the guy. He comes up at the same time and he can actually make you hear all the words. And he would interpret the lyrics for meaning. No singers were doing that.
Oh, please lend your little ear to my plea. Lend a ray of cheer to my plea. Tell me that you love me too.
The Whiteman Orchestra with Bing singing solos is bigger than ever and recording hit records at a breathtaking pace. In 1929, Whiteman signs to make a movie, The King of Jazz, featuring his orchestra, and Bing is slated to do a solo. Whiteman gives everyone in the orchestra a new car. Soon after, Bing is rear-ended, then jailed for driving under the influence. The solo goes to somebody else. The incident fades, but the wild lifestyle doesn't, even as the Rhythm Boys begin making short films.
When a fellow needs a friend, call on dear old Estes. When he needs a 5 or 10, he never turned a tape man down. Rip, stitch, and...
You know, they were gadabouts. They wanted to play golf. I mean, that's what Bing and Rinker wanted to do. And they're living it up, and they've got all these women, and they've got all the speakeasies, and New York is, and the country is at their feet.
Beautiful girl, you're a lovely picture. Beautiful girl, you're a gorgeous mixture of all that lies under those big blue skies. My heart cries, beautiful girl.
At a party, Bing met and fell for Dixie Lee, a rising star. Dixie Lee's father declares that Bing will never amount to anything. Well, she married him anyway. In Crosby's words, "It was Miss Big, you know, marrying Mr. Little."
There's a consensus among people who knew Bing in the early years that Dixie had a great deal with launching him, not just his career, but him as an adult.
At first, Bing's wild lifestyle didn't change. 6 months into the marriage, Dixie left Bing and flew off to Mexico. It was a turning point. The woman he loved was gone, and despite a terror of flying, Bing flew to Mexico to get her back. When he got there, he sang, "I Surrender, Dear." Dixie and Bing reunited, and Bing changed his ways.
I surrender, dear.
Bing's personal life calmed down, but the Rhythm Boys and Paul Whiteman were having differences. Before long, the boys were off on their own. They played the famed Coconut Grove, California's in-spot for power brokers and celebrities.
According to Betty Davis, his voice was like magic. She said all the movie stars were in here. You couldn't hear a pin drop on the floor. There was so much romance in the air.
If I had a talking picture of you, I would run it every time I felt blue. I would sit there in the gloom of my lonely little room and applaud each time you whispered, I love you, love you.
Although we've never met, you are far away, my face upon the billboards to you will always say, Bing, Bing, I love you. Bang, bang, you're screwy.
The Grove leads to making short feature films for producer Max Sennett. From plot to dialogue, the stories were typically made up along the way, but they all revolved around Bing.
I'm not engaged to Bing Crosby.
You're not? Well, what a shame.
I never saw the man. I wouldn't know him if I fell over him.
And now you are in a nice jam.
The theme of all of these movies is that this character Bing, everybody knows what he sounds like because of the radio, but nobody knows what he looks like. And apparently he never has ID. So he's always being pulled over, you know, for speeding by a cop, and I'm Bing Crosby. And, you are? How, you know, prove it. So he has to sing a song.
So you're Bing Crosby, huh? Yes, sir. Sound your A.
I may seem proud, I may act gay, that's just a pose. I'm not that way. 'cause deep down in my heart I say, I surrendered it.
Well, the best thing about the Max Sennis shorts, I made 8 or 10 of them, and I made some for the Christie brothers, too, was the training it gave me in ad-libbing, because they never had much of a script. You were just told to go in a scene and ad-lib some dialogue with the other characters, and when Mac dropped his handkerchief, why, make an exit.
Nothing will ever separate us again.
In my hideaway.
Back at the Coconut Grove, they begin a nightly local radio broadcast. It is hugely popular because of Bing.
It was only at the Coconut Grove was he encouraged to sing more and more solos. And it became very clear that the Rhythm Boys' time had passed, and Crosby, the solo singer, had arrived. He would be singing with the orchestra, and the dancers would stop, gather around the bandstand, and listen to Bing singing. His records started to take off, hit record after hit record.
The inevitable comes to pass. Without fanfare or acrimony, the Rhythm Boys say goodbye to each other and the Coconut Grove.
Low down, lower than that. Whenever the swells low down in big town, low down, there's no low down lower than that.
Bing is on his own, but not for long. The president of CBS, Bill Paley, took notice of Bing and offered him a national radio show for an astounding $1,500 a week.
Introducing Bing Crosby. Here is the moment you have been waiting for, the delayed appearance of that sensational baritone, Bing Crosby, whose singing has made him the favorite of California through the mediums of the motion pictures, the vaudeville stage, and the radio.
Just one more chance to prove it's you alone I care for.
Following that first broadcast, the phones went mad, the media went mad, and Bing Crosby's radio career was really on its way.
Just one more chance.
He's the first person to understand that when you're singing on the radio, you're not singing to 1 million people out in America. You're singing to one person in the living room sitting next to a radio.
I'd want no others if you'd grant me.
He had the first voice, really, that had hormones. It wasn't just somebody singing there. The voice thrilled women, but it thrilled men as well, because men wanted to sing like that.
Now you're the jury at my trial.
Audiences went crazy. Within 6 weeks or something, CBS had increased its number of affiliates by 15% or something incredible like that. 40 or 50 stations had signed on.
For just one more chance.
Within 2 weeks of Bing's national radio debut, 2 of his records made the top 5, and he was a national star.
When I was a kid, about 13, 14, I used to rush home from school to hear Bing Crosby sing on the Cremo Cigar Hour. He was on 15 minutes every day, and I loved it. And of course, I had a crush on him because his voice was so wonderful.
Rose of Mandalay, though you're far away.
Enormously popular, Bing's radio show lacked what other shows had, a theme song. Bing came up with his idea for what would become his signature song.
Bing Crosby, the Cremo singer.
Where the blue of the night meets the gold of the day, someone waits for me.
Radio gave Bing a national audience, but the theater still gave Bing a live audience he loved to work. He played the Capitol Theater in 1932 and hit it off with the MC, Bob Hope.
I was a master of ceremonies and Bing was a star. We were doing these shows and it got a little boring, so we started ad-libbing together. And we worked out a routine, and we were there 2 weeks.
I do miss Fred Astaire.
Yip, yip, da hootie, got me a beauty. She sure is a dream. My baby said yes, she said yes, she said yes. She didn't say no.
Also that year, Bing met the founder of Decca Records, Jack Kapp, who would shape Bing's recording career over the next 20 years. Bing's recordings for Decca were immensely popular. and Bing often teamed with other artists like his good friend Louis Armstrong.
Hey, Pops, you want to come up here and take a little, leave a little?
If you sail
Sailing
over the sea,
will you wait for me?
take my tip, they're all moto hip in Italy.
Well, I Reduce, as for France.
Oh, they zigzag.
Yes, believe it or not.
I do believe, I do indeed.
Frenchmen's all remember what they call le jazz high.
Ah, formidable. Take a
I
plane.
used to watch these two men record because they recorded at Decca. They were extraordinary. It was magic just to see them work. I just look at them and I'd wonder how it happened. It was like ham and eggs. It just went together.
Take one bar, and all of them are
Well gone.
from the equator up to the pole. Everybody wing and ring, ding, ding, a ling, and that rock, 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 rock and roll. From the north to the south, east to the west. Jazz is king, jazz is the thing that folks dig best.
The Kraft Music Hall with Bing Crosby, John Scott Trotter and his orchestra, Marilyn Maxwell, and Bing's two visitors for this evening, Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey. And here's Bing Crosby.
Take it easy, take it easy.
By 1933, radio was big, and Kraft Foods sponsored what was to become the most prestigious program on radio, the Kraft Music Hall.
The radio was so different in those days. I mean, it was the form of entertainment. He had guests from all walks of life, and it was a pleasure to listen to him. He was a good comedian.
You gotta listen to me, Bing. There's a guy outside wants to beat me up.
All right, Yuki, I'll go right out.
To fight him?
To get in line.
Well, somebody's gotta do something. I can't fight this guy tonight.
Why not?
I got a date at the blood bank tomorrow.
To put in or take out?
Bing's relaxed style was contagious. The audience loved it. Guests loved it. Show regulars like announcer Ken Carpenter. He loved it.
Has Paramount got your voice insured, Bing?
Oh, yes, Jimmy, and for a pretty penny.
I'm in pictures. What do you think I should have insured?
Get full coverage. Take it easy.
The show was a staple of American life. An astounding 50 million people tuned in every Thursday to hear Bing.
Take it easy.
So, stock up. Tomorrow get plenty of the 5 Kraft cheese spreads.
There's a great record by Judy Garland, a song called Sweet 16, and she says she was so frustrated with life that she was going to enter a monastery, but then she realized that she couldn't hear Bing Crosby on the radio in a monastery, and they probably wouldn't let her eat Kraft cheese. That's how popular he was.
Hey, come out of the clouds, come down to earth. You're in Hollywood, California.
Hollywood wanted in. Paramount cast Bing in a feature-length movie. But Bing wasn't your normal matinee idol material.
You don't understand, do you?
What?
That I really love you.
Bing had a receding hairline and had 2 handicaps, protruding ears.
You annoy me so I could slap your face.
For a short while, Bing put up with a painful process of gluing his ears back.
They did for a couple movies with glue and adhesive tape. Oh, it felt terrible. And if you get in the hot lights for 5 or 10 minutes, where the glue would weaken and they'd pop out, and they'd cut. Everybody'd have to go sit down while they pinned my ears back. Jack Oakey said I looked like a whippet in full flight. So one day they popped out, and I said, oh, the hell with it. That's the way they're going to stay. And then, so they never bothered with it again.
Bing's first picture for Paramount, The Big Broadcast, was a success. Paramount signs Bing, and he begins making 3 movies a year.
Betting on the ponies.
Aw, you're just burned because I was winning. Some guy, he picks all the phonies.
Mom, and now you just listen here to me.
I know. I ain't the biggest catfish in the sea. Let's hear something new.
Frank Capra called him one of the 10 greatest actors he ever worked with because nobody was more inventive at bits of business. He'd be having to sing a song, he'd twirl a lariat, he'd throw a ball up, he'd jump on the bed, he'd comb his hair, he'd be doing 10 different things. You can't take your eyes off him. It's almost as though he were choreographed, and yet he's doing it spontaneously.
when you hear a real hep cat.
He really had the capacity of complete calmness. I think his whole body and singing was because of his perfect rhythm. Whether it was a fast song or it was a slow song, it was just a completely natural way of singing.
Bing was a natural. His film persona was so much his own easygoing personality and charm, and moviegoers loved it.
He succeeded in letting everybody who saw him feel as if they knew him personally.
The buffalo roam around the zoo.
He created in each person, millions and millions of people, members of his audience, the feeling that they personally, intimately knew him.
But 1938 is when I made the movie with Bing Crosby and Fred McMurray in a picture called Sing You Sinners. Bing was wonderful to me as a kid. He was just great. I was supposed to be a jockey, and I was riding these giant horses, and it scared me to death. And it was a big scene, and there was page after page of dialogue. And I'd get right down to the end, and I'd forget the line. Then we'd have to go all the way back again, and it was a long trucking shot. We must have done it 45 times. And never once did Bing ever display any temper or any aggravation, nothing like that. We just did it over and over again, and he was so very, very kind to me.
Love thy neighbor.
He was the coolest guy in the world. He was so laid back. The big fiction of Bing Crosby was that he was so lazy, hates to work. In fact, he's the hardest working man in Hollywood. But everybody believed it because nothing about him shows any kind of a heartbeat to him. He's just so cool. He's so neighborly. He's so optimistic.
You wouldn't dare.
Why wouldn't I? Tomorrow you'll be back in your own world, spoiled and petted and sheltered and out of my reach. In all my life, I'll probably never see you again. But tonight, you're mine.
He could whistle like crazy. He had a marvelous whistle. And I had one too. He whistled and I would whistle. Even to this day, if I hear it, I just get goose pimples because we had so much fun. I think we did it in one take.
If you will wait till the sun shines, Nellie. In the sweet,
In the sweet,
in the sweet.
just be discreet and wait
till the sweet by and by.
Hit movies, hit records, radio and personal appearances before admiring audiences. Life is good and getting better.
You must have been a beautiful baby. You must have been a wonderful child. When you were only starting to go to kindergarten, I bet you drove the little boys wild.
Dixie, now confident of the future, gives up a career to raise a family. Their first son is Gary, named after Gary Cooper. 3 more boys will follow. By now, the breadwinner of the family is going places.
Baby, 'cause baby, look at you now. Sweet Leilani, heavenly flower.
In the 1930s, an entire generation of singers are growing up listening and imitating Bing Crosby.
So suddenly you've got all these kids coming from everywhere. Perry Como doing Bing. Dean Martin doing Bing. Dick Todd in Canada doing Bing. Singers in France, in England, all of them doing their own versions of Crosby.
Como said, unless you sounded like Bing, you didn't eat, because that was what people wanted to hear. You know, that was by then recognized as really the only way to sing the American popular songbook.
No one surpassed Bing, but one crooner was different, Sinatra.
When somebody loves you, it's no good unless he loves you. All the way.
Studio promotions portray a rivalry between the two, but in reality, they admired each other.
Dance all night with me till the stars fade from above. They'll say it's all right with me. People will say
Sinatra always said that Bing was the role model of his career.
You want to sing, huh?
I think it'd
Well,
be...
it might not be a bad idea now that you mention it.
Well, I thought somebody ought to mention it.
Well, go ahead. Could you give me a little sample of your work? I'd like to just see how you're swinging lately.
There was a competitive spirit between the two, particularly when they worked together. It meant a great deal to Sinatra to be working with him because he admired the man so much.
For once in your life, you can give up, can't you?
Give up?
Give up.
Who the hell sent you here, Sinatra?
No. Sinatra had nothing to do with this, and I wouldn't talk that way about Sinatra.
I don't mean to
if I were
malign
you.
Mr. Sinatra, because I'm a great fan of his, a great admirer of his private and public life.
Furthermore, singers
Why?
like Sinatra come once in a lifetime.
Why did he have to come along in my lifetime?
We're off on the road to Morocco. This taxi is tough on the spine.
In the 1940s, the studio paired Bing up with another rising star, Bob Hope, and hit box office dynamite.
We meet Dorothy, Lamour.
To go to a movie and escape to Never Never Land thanks to Bing and Bob Hope and any of the other people that Bing worked with, why, he was just a master.
Where you going? Oh, I need some air. The night air's bad for you, Junior. Back in the net.
Come on, Dottie. Bing's waiting for us in the boat, and we'll take everybody with us on the road to Zanzibar.
Bing and Bob Hope took to the road 7 times in zany comedies.
He must have seen the picture. Oh, boy. Come on, Ann.
The road started at Del Mar Racetrack.
Crooner Bing Crosby personally greets the first patrons to his $1 million enterprise. Bing's the only crooner to turn turf impresario.
Bing was a stockholder and invited Hope to the track's opening. Before long, they were entertaining guests with gags they had invented years earlier at the Capitol Theater.
And the audience loved it, and there was somebody there from Paramount. He went back to the studio and said, "You got to put these guys together."
Junior, it worked. Yeah. How about that? The magic ring. It worked on you. Hey. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle.
He just loved getting into this hokey stuff. In fact, a lot of the producers said to me, "Boy, I'm sure glad you got Bing doing low comedy, because we never could get him to do that, you know?" And he loved it. He loved to get laughs, and he loved to be in that kind of an atmosphere.
I've had enough. Yeah, me too. Who do you think you're pushing around? We're not cattle, you know.
They're regular guys, you know, not the pretty boys and, you know, aren't I wonderful, Tom, terrific, look at me, baby. No. They're just guys, and that's what makes their spontaneity so special.
It looked spontaneous because it was. And more often than not, Crosby and Hope ad-libbed dialogue, leaving co-star Dorothy Lamour not knowing what would happen next.
Some women can love any type man, but not me. I've got to have a beast of a man. Do you hear me? A beast.
Is a wolf considered a beast?
They try to outdo each other, you know, with jokes. Over on one side of the studio would be Bob with his writers, and on the other side would be Bing with his writers, you know. And all of a sudden, they weren't going by the script. Well, the one that really suffered for that was Dorothy Lamour, because Dorothy didn't know. She says, "Where in the world? What's happening? I don't know where I am."
We had a lot of fun going back and forth together.
Say, look, Junior, you're supposed to carry your sea bag on your shoulder. Where do you hide your souvenirs? Oh, I'm ready. What is this, a watermelon?
In fact, we had a lot of tricks. We used to steal each other's lines, and that's what caused a lot of different kind of looks on the screen. And the audience kind of recognized that, you know?
Like meat and potatoes. Or salt and tomatoes. Boy, what a blend. Don't put it in the papers. Don't put it on the air. Don't put it in your pipe. Put it there.
This is St. Mary's. They've got a problem. So they just dialed O for O'Malley. Father O'Malley, that is. And now the situation is well in hand.
When Bing wasn't on the road, he played a character he may be best known for, Father O'Malley.
I hear the shortest speech you ever heard. This is a holiday. Everybody take the day off.
Or would you like to swing on a star, carry moonbeams home in a jar, and be better off than you are? Or would you rather be a mule?
Bing's portrayal was patterned after the Jesuit priests he knew at Gonzaga University.
He was thoroughly convincing, and he brought the priesthood into focus. These are not just people that put on habits and so forth. I mean, they're human beings. They got a sense of humor, and they really can communicate with people here.
Young man, as a matter of curiosity, what made you become a priest?
It's not so sanctimonious. That standpoint of view is great as far as being an actor carrying off the part. The man was brilliant.
Bing?
Yeah, Gary?
This gives me about the greatest pleasure I've ever had to present to you the Best Acting Award for 1944 for your wonderful, superb performance.
Superb?
Superb.
Oh, my heavens.
That's the best word I can dig up at the moment in going my way.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Bing, my congratulations.
I couldn't be more surprised if I won the Kentucky Derby, really.
On this day of independence, on this Independence Day, listen to an American troubadour from the USA.
Bing's mark in film is as significant as his impact on radio and music. He made over 50 motion pictures with 3 nominations and 1 Oscar. From 1935 to 1950, Bing always was one of the top 10 box office stars. For 5 consecutive years, 1944 to 49, Bing was #1.
He can do almost anything, as far as I'm concerned. And if you can't sing with Bing, you just can't sing, you know, and we just had the most wonderful time. He's absolutely marvelous. And of course, anything that Bing Crosby's in, everybody wants to see because they know and they're familiar with him and his style.
Everyone can relax and we'll have a few yaks, and you can tell them we'll be there.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know.
It's almost inevitable that it's going to be Bing Crosby who records in 1942 White Christmas.
Listen.
And White Christmas did become the national anthem of overseas troops. That was the song that reminded them what they were fighting for, what they remembered about the country, what they were coming home to.
He would sing White Christmas to 20,000 gathered infantrymen, and there wasn't a dry eye in the place.
Bing was a one-man army. He broadcast for the Armed Forces Network, learning to speak German phonetically and bombarding Germany with Allied messages.
He became not only sort of Mr. America, but he became Mr. America for the world.
The Germans called him Der Bingle. The nickname stayed with him the rest of his life.
And may all your Christmases be white.
Don't little lambsy divey, a kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? A dum dum dee dee.
I got you going to do a show tonight.
He said, nothing is ever going to give me greater pleasure than the time I spent entertaining our servicemen in World War II. We look back with great pride on that.
But Hope and I are just friendly rivals. I know you appreciate that, and I don't want you to believe anything else, because actually there's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for Bob Hope. And I feel there's nothing in the world he wouldn't do for me. And that's the way we go through life, doing nothing for each other, just going along.
The enemy.
Bing recorded his radio shows for the military on special V discs that were shipped overseas to the troops.
Buy a bond. Buy a bond. And by, the bonds you buy will bring you victory.
He raised millions in war bonds through his radio show, celebrity golf matches, and special performances. Bing even accompanied the Third Army in France and mistakenly ended up behind enemy lines.
During the Battle of the Bulge, the Ardennes campaign, he somehow got into a Jeep and crossed into German territory, and everybody got hysterical, and they brought him back, and they said, Bing, do you realize that town is still held by the Germans? And he said, well, we had it this morning.
The weather's fine for flying. The fog has gone to bed.
There's such good visibility. You can see victory ahead.
His impact during World War II was absolutely fantastic. It was said that his voice was being heard somewhere in the world every moment of the day.
I'll be home for Christmas.
August 14th, 1945. All over the Paramount lot, you could hear the radios and people listening intently. At one point, everybody started hollering and yelling. The war had been declared over. And they all took off, heading for this huge billboard, a war bond sign. On the sign, they had the helmets of the three fascist powers. Two of them had been X'd out, and they were all shouting out, "Crosby, Crosby, Crosby." Suddenly, he came along with a bucket of paint, black paint, and he put the X over the last of the helmets of the enemy forces. Everybody cheered, and then they really took off.
Bing got America through the war. GIs overwhelmingly voted Bing the American who had done the most, and America did not forget.
It really seems presumptuous for me to be up here accepting an award from GIs, because this just puts me deeper in their debt than I already was, because I don't feel anything I can ever do will ever get me even with the GIs.
If only
And what a lot of people don't know, and this surprised me, is that the peak years of Crosby's career were not during the war. They were after the war. 1946 to 1949, those are the years he was at the top of the box office.
He was the most popular actor. He was half of the most popular comedy team of the era. Great radio star, great master of ceremonies. And I think that voice and delivery, the envy of any person that ever worked in radio or television. He was just so big.
Although Bing's career was at full stride, his stint with Kraft was about to end. Bing wanted to record and replay the show instead of broadcasting live. And when Kraft refused, Bing quit and was hired by Philco. Recording soon became a reality.
Yeah, I think I'll do a duet.
Like to do a duet?
Yeah,
What song?
Anything you can do, I can do better.
It sounds like a challenge, but I accept. Buddy?
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Bing even invested in the company that developed audio and then videotape.
I can shoot a partridge with a single cartridge.
I can get a sparrow with the bow and arrow.
I can do most anything.
Can you bake a pie?
Nope.
Neither can I.
You see?
Anything you can sing, I can sing louder.
Loud?
I can sing anything
That's
louder
my
than
racket. You can't possibly top me.
Yes, I can.
I'll split a tonsil before I let you
Yes,
top me.
I can.
You're turning purple,
Yes,
dear.
I can.
No.
Bing's career climbed even higher, but his home life struggled.
Be careful.
Dixie began an alcohol dependency, and the boys, now teenagers, were a handful. Bing worked harder than ever, juggling the demands of his career and the needs of his family. After Bing's death, his oldest son, Gary, would write a tell-all talk book, masquerading as fact. It enraged everyone that knew Bing.
He didn't deserve that book. I think Gary wrote it out of anger where his career was going, where his life was going. He had no focus.
He was a strict dad, but he wasn't a mean dad. I've talked to people that knew Bing, and they always say, no, he never was mean to his kids.
The early years, I think like any family, you're going to butt heads with your mom, your dad, and your brothers and sisters. I think there was some, father-son stuff that everybody has. The book was I think an attempt by my dad to come to grips with some things in his life.
It's my heart.
America was changing. Rock and roll burst on the scene, pushing ballad singers to the background. Television was overtaking radio.
Now, here's Bing. I've been wondering where everybody went. Finally discovered they were all hiding in the living room with the lights turned out. But actually, the reason I haven't been on TV sooner, I've been waiting for color. General Electric finally came up with the little green, so I grabbed it.
Bing's incredible run was not over yet, but his private life would be painful in the early 50s. Bing's friend and mentor from Decca Records, Jack Kapp, died. Dixie, drinking heavily, strained their marriage to the breaking point. They reconciled, but she died of cancer in 1952 at 42. Bing was devastated.
I think Bing was crazy about her. I think the marriage was difficult. He had an important love affair in the 1940s. He did talk about divorce, but I think there was nobody in his life quite like Dixie. And of course, he was inconsolable when she died. I mean, everybody who was there said he was just, they'd never seen Bing Crosby shed a tear, let alone racking sobs.
To overcome his grief, Bing threw himself into work. He tried dramatic roles in films.
He had developed a screen image which was easy for him to fit into, the Bing Crosby image. But when you look at his performances in depth, especially in The Country Girl, there's a huge depth behind that Crosby image. The Country Girl is a riveting performance.
When you took this job, I promised you no pity. And no pity it's going to be.
I don't expect any. I'm only warning you, get rid of me. Let me go back to New York.
Making movies would ease the pain, and a year later, being at Paramount would change his life.
Love is lovelier the second time around.
On a blue sky day in 1953, an up-and-coming star, Katharine Grant, was on the Paramount lot, and fate intervened as she passed Bing's dressing room.
Just as I was passing by there, I heard this voice saying, "Howdy, Tex, what's your hurry?"
The courtship and engagement lasted several years. When he married the girl from West Texas, the day Katharine took Bing home is legendary.
He went to Texas 2 weeks after we were married, and he stood in a receiving line and shook hands with everybody in about 3 counties.
Bing and Katharine began a second family, 2 boys and his first girl, Mary Frances. And not wanting to repeat the mistakes he made with the first family, Bing started working less, about 90 days a year. Bing dabbled in early television, but the 1957 award-winning Etzel Show was Bing's breakthrough.
While I give to you and you give to me true love.
The money he earned would build a library at Gonzaga University.
You'll do.
Television beamed Bing into living rooms across America, and everyone had a front row seat. Bing hosted the biggest stars, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, and Rosemary Clooney.
But when I got
Bing loved singing with Mama because their registers were so similar that he could sing in a key that he was comfortable with, and Mama had no problem doing that as well.
Television introduced Bing to a new generation. He made specials, including the family Christmas shows, and he hosted the Hollywood Palace 32 times, more than any other star. Television fit Bing like a glove, but he decided to work less and spend more time with his family. Still, Bing was a commanding presence in the industry, and he was always there if a friend needed help.
He never wanted people to realize that he was working behind the scenes, and yet he was always paying attention not only to his own career and his own life, but to those around him and those that he loved. It's quite remarkable.
One hell of a good guy. We'd be out there playing, and some boy would be coming over, say, from Rest with a song.
Better step in the office here. Sit down.
we have to stop while he goes in there in the piano and help him with his song. And he did that for years, helping everybody.
You know, Bing never took fame seriously, but golf was different. He created the Pro-Am tournament at Pebble Beach that is one of golf's most important venues to this day. Bing loved golf and played every chance he could. He had just completed a round on a course in Spain in 1977 when he collapsed and died.
As his wife said, I can't think of a better way of a golfer who also sang to finish his round.
Bing was 74 when he died, and the whole world mourned his passing. The man who thought himself merely lucky left behind a legacy that is simply miraculous. Bing has more hit records than Elvis and the Beatles combined.
Even today, when I hear some of those records, I can hear the happiness in the voices of all of us.
Bing dominated radio for a decade and holds the movie box office record.
I have him. I have him in the love of his friends. I have him in his movies. What he was, who he was, is in all of the road shows, as well as in Country Girl. He was very serious and very funny. And those things have been preserved.
He brought us joy at Christmas and made us proud to be Americans.
The way he worked, the way he sang, and everything, there really was something spiritual about the man. He had another thing going for him.
He's one of a kind. There will never be another Bing Crosby.
You know, every generation thinks their favorite star is the greatest of all time. This is true for Al Jolson, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, but Bing's popularity will never be equaled. He started it all. I'm Rich Little. Thanks for watching.
Of the day, someone waits for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've probably divined, this is the big love scene.
You know there's something wrong here, though?
What's that?
It should be boy, girl, boy, girl. We're short a girl.
We're long a boy, I make it.
Yeah, I do believe we have a boy here that's too many. You can scram, boy.
No, I'm not budging.
Well, neither am I.
I want to be happy, but I can't be happy till I make you happy, too.
Where the blue of the night meets the gold of the day. Won't you hit the road? Please lend a little to my plea. Lend a ray of cheer to my plea. Show up. Tell me that you love me too.